I never would have thought I would be recording this, but it's important for transparency. I made 2 previous videos about it, and it's important to continue in, like I said, if you want to call this part 3 of the Moduspace series. And in today's video, I'm going to go over the mindset and the process of how we got here and how I ended up buying Moducases. Hey everyone, this is Mr. Mom Collectibles. I am back with another video. And as I alluded to in that intro, yes, I actually ended up crossing over and buying Moducase. But I thought this video was very important for transparency purposes. And a couple things have changed over the last few months. My mindset, along with some lifestyle changes. And I think it's important to make this video for those who know my stance on Moduspace of what it was. If you had watched the previous videos, I'll link them here definitely. And really, I just want to talk about where I was to where I am now. And for those who remember, I made this first video with my friend Carlos, and it was basically called Modu Waste, the things that kind of you don't people don't talk about, right? And he and I did about a half-hour video where we talked about certain things about Moduspace and the cases and things like that. And it was very important for me to bring him in because he owned the product, physically had it behind him, as you could see. And I've always been it was very always important for me that I never try to speak outside my lane. I'll speak as much as I can about something or at least give my opinion about it. But ultimately, I really can't jump too much into a certain topic without at least having people around me that have the experience. And that was the reason for this video, this team up with Carlos, because I can only talk about it to a certain point, and then he could really kind of drive it home with his thoughts on it. And then we had this part 2 video with a larger panel with Carlos once again, Don Prime from Geeking Out, and Sean the Hadalorian. And all 3 of those panel members had Moducases. Sean being at the time, he was the newest owner of the product. He had just gotten them in, just started building them. And like I said, this is just kind of an expansion conversation, a part 2, if you will. And like I said, there's people out there that want to label, oh, well, we were hating on them, hating on them. We were just were we being very critical? Absolutely. Were we questioning the pricing of the products? Absolutely. Were we questioning the lead times and why things take so long? 100%. There's nothing wrong with pushing back a little bit, asking the questions. There's just and the way that I gauge things is the feedback from you, the viewer. Overall, the responses that we got in the comments were fantastic, the engagement, and people valued our opinions and valued our concerns and took the time to share these topics because, like I said, the problem that I felt about it was there was just so much one-sided opinions about it throughout a lot of channels that I felt like there wasn't a lot of transparency with the whole process and of the product itself. And so kind of around this time frame of where I concluded myself was that I have the muscle racks that you see behind me, and that's what I was content with. I'd still stand by that. They're fantastic. It's a fantastic alternative. I am not one of those that consider this a Moducase killer. There are those out there that do try to compare these. And I made it very clear, and I even did a pros and cons video about the muscle racks, which I'll link that as well. And one of them is that, these are not compared to Moducase, and don't try to compare them to Moducase. If there isn't a comparison, there is differences between them. And like I said, I made a pros and cons about the DIY muscle rack. Now, that being said, do I stand behind everything in those 2 videos that you saw? 100%. Is there any type of backtracking or things I wish I would have taken back? Absolutely not. Um, Everything that I said in those videos and that content, I still stand behind 100%. And there's nothing wrong with being critical. And these companies want our money, and there's nothing wrong with asking difficult questions sometimes. And I really think that just falls on deaf ears a lot, in my opinion. Now, that being said, how did we get from there to me buying the product. Well, let me explain a couple things. Those who know, I've made this announcement before. I have, my daughter who's 4 years old, and my wife and I are expecting my second child, a son, in August. And this collection room, and I'll be very transparent. You guys can see it. There's a cradle right here. There's a bassinet here. I have stuff all over the floor. I've kind of given up on this. You guys can absolutely see there's there's toys there. There's stuff all over the place. And like I said, my room it's a mess. 100% is. I've kind of not given up, but the fact is this is going to become my son's future bedroom. Okay, and my wife has agreed, graciously, we are going to renovate my basement, which is, we installed, all flood proof, everything's done. And we are going to begin construction on the basement in a few months. And that being said, it's going to turn into a playroom for my daughter, but a portion of it is going to be my new studio collection room. And I had kind of carte blanche to make it a little bit bigger of a space and have some freedom to design it how I need to. So it will be my man cave, and then I will have a corded off section, that like a room that's going to be secured, and then outside of that will be a play area for my daughter. So that's going to be my area for the foreseeable future. Now, that being said, that brought about a fantastic opportunity, which was, my original process was going to be buy more muscle racks and build them downstairs, and that was going to be it. Uh, and that was what my plan was going to be between August and September, was just to buy more racks. The one behind me is a 60-inch long, and that's what I was going to buy, additional 60-inch long muscle racks, and put them downstairs in a specific configuration and call it a day. Well, what changed? Um, Reality set in. The reality is that I remember what it was like when we had my daughter, and things were a whirlwind for months, let alone our lives are going to change in a few months also, having another child. But then on top of that, it's a new journey because we're going to have a 4-year-old already. And so we're going to be balancing two children. The fact that I was naive enough to think that during that time, I'm going to basically say, see, I'm going to go downstairs and build muscle racks and take time away. It's just not realistic. And I've accepted that. Now, I know people out there can say, well, a little bit here, a little bit there. It's very true. But the reality is that I just kind of, my family's more important. So I want to spend as much time as I can to support my wife as she recovers, to give the attention to my daughter and my son, just what it is. So any moment that I'm not working that I can spend with my family is going to be priority number one. That's what it is. And so I was very naive a few months ago to think, well, I'm going to build these racks. No, that's time away from my family. That's so much more important, because those are minutes and hours that I won't get back. That's what it is. I've always said this: collecting's a hobby. My family comes first. Okay, that's very important to me. That being said, I thought about the idea of Moduspace because I was in a much better financial situation, and I had the opportunity of basically starting from ground zero, which not a lot of people do. Many times, people have to adapt to the environment they're in with their display cases, whether it's DTOFs, the Billy cases, muscle racks, whatever it is. I'm literally starting from scratch, and I get a fresh start, which not many people collecting get that chance to when it comes to designing your room. So I want to outline a few tips and tricks that I used that led me to the purchasing that I did. My number one tip was, I spoke to people who owned the product, including Carlos, including my friend Dave, Hadalorian, Don Prime. I consulted those, just even over the few months between now and even, over the course of, I relied on their opinion in terms of what they thought. I gave them, some information about pictures of the space I'm going to be moving into. And I just got a lot of feedback about everything. And therefore, it led me to help make a better understanding. And they really helped me through like the pros and cons of certain products. Like initially, I was going to go with Max Series, But then reevaluating things, I actually ended up going with the DF series, the DF 120s to be more specific. And so that was the route that I went. But like I said, not knowing anything, I was originally going max. I figured bigger, better, what the hell. But it really just completely blew the budget out of the water. The DF allowed me that mix between great space allocation and also within my budget. Now, the next thing, which was very important to me, was laying out the space schematically. So what I did was, this is the actual layout. The room roughly that I'm looking at currently is about 12 feet wide by about 20 feet in length. So about 12 by 20, about 12 by 20, 12 by 18. So that being said, what I did here was I laid out the DF 120. So this is an aerial view. It's going to be an L shape. So what I did was I drew out 1, 2, and this is a corner unit, and then 3, 4. So ultimately, what I ended up going with was 12 DF 120. So there's 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then you have two corners. You have a DF, I believe it's a 60 and a 30, that two of them that equal, the three. So drawing it out was very important to me. And that's the next step. I think it makes sense, is to draw out some specs to visually see it. And so what I allowed me to do was, and I just did this in Excel, by drawing this out, it allowed me to play around with different combinations just to ensure that the DF 120s were the correct schematic. And once I laid this out, I was able to do some math here about what the size and measurements were, and it actually fits perfectly in the space, and it allows me to expand in the future. I can actually go this way and do another corner and wrap around if I really wanted to. And then this is a front view. So you have the three stacks high. So you have 3 and 3, which is your 6. And here are my two, my two corners that make the one. I did opt to get risers and the top boards. It's a heavier duty top board if you want to display stuff on top, because if you see the racks behind me, I do still keep some non-hot toy items above. And so this is just, like I said, this is the front view, and then this would be the other side, which is these two panels here. That's what this would be. 3 and 3 is 6. So laying everything out was very important to me. Now, before someone, what about the muscle racks, right? And that was what's very important to me. So below is the same configuration except with the muscle racks. Now, this is taking that same concept I talked about where I wanted to do 60, 60, 60s. And you can see here, this is mimicking an identical layout, but what's the key? There's no corner piece to a muscle rack. So that right off the bat creates a visual disruption, if you will, where I would do a 60 and a 60, and then I would have to decide between layouts, what do I want to do? Do I want to take this one and butt it up? And I've seen people do that, where when you put plexiglass and stuff, you're kind of like seeing through, if that makes sense. And so that's one option. And then I thought about maybe leaving this open and like here and leave like an exposed corner. So what I would do is kind of pretend there was a corner piece and leave this area open. And maybe that could be like a little storage corner that no one would see. And so, that was difficult. But the one deal breaker also for me was the plexiglass. Because if I did go downstairs, I was opting to go full plexi. That being said, a local supplier to me has plexiglass, but obviously the price on it is a lot of money, and so paying for 60-inch wide sheets is an enormous price if I want to cut them myself. But they do offer also pre-cut, but they only go up to 48 inches. So I thought to myself, what if I get 48-inch wide muscle racks to avoid maybe some labor of having to cut plexiglass, because it just is what it is. That changes my design. So right here is accommodating the 48-inch wide plexiglass by going with 48-inch muscle racks instead. So I would ditch the 60s and go 40, 48, 3 here, and then once again 48, 48. But then what I did, here's that same dilemma. Do I take these two and butt them right up, or do I leave a little bit of a gap there? And that way, you can maybe use this like a little storage area. So it's not exactly visually appealing. And then this is what just the 60-inch or a muscle rack would look like from the front view with the shelving and stuff. I would actually have to build a custom riser if I want to match, and then the top, you can still put stuff on top, but I would have to build this out of like 2x4 or 2x6, whatever it is. This isn't something that, unlike Moducase offers, I'd have to buy. So when it comes to price, I did a rough breakdown of what the cost would be, kind of a head-to-head comparison. And at the end of the day, there's certain determining factors that you just can't factor in, obviously, when you're doing the muscle rack. But I came pretty close in terms of how much would it cost for me to do muscle racks, knowing what I know, versus doing the Moducases. If I did the Moducases, I was looking at around $5,700 before shipping. 57, 5,800. Call it 6,000. We'll just be generous and say 6,000. And that was before shipping. The muscle racks, I got it up to around 2,800 before tax on any of the accessory items. Now you may ask, well, how could that, 2,800? That included the muscle racks, shipping, tax. That included the plexiglass as an estimate, not even final. That included the components that I used to build my own personal. I'm not saying that price of 2,800 would apply as a hard baseline, but what I'm trying to say is I've built these before. So I'm just taking the components that I'm used to, that I'm happy with, and multiplying that. The paint that I used, the plywood for the backing I used, the bolts I used, the lighting I used, all that stuff that I used. That's where the price kind of got up there for me. And so for that 2,000 plus variance, yeah, and I'm a component of, I think that the muscle racks always are going to be cheaper than Moducase, but at the end of the day, it's about also time and things like that. And so the fact of the matter is, I was willing to kind of jump in with the Moducase and decide to say that was probably the best option for me. Now, something else that definitely weighed in on my decision for this, another thing that factored into my Moducase decision was I took accountability of my existing inventory of figures. How many figures do I actually have around me? Do I remember the number right now? It's close to probably about 100, give or take, which I have, like I said, because there's stuff here that you guys don't even see that's off camera. I have on the floor and boxes and things. So what I did was I looked at the existing inventory of figures I own. I looked at a couple variables. Everything I have here, do I foresee myself getting rid of anything within the next 6 to 8 months? How many vehicles do I have now versus vehicles I plan to have in the future? How many figures are on pre-order right now, so I understand what my pre-orders are for the next year, year and a half. I also did a calculation, believe it or not, of how many figures I got on average per year. And I have been collecting Hot Toys, specifically 1/6 scale, since June of 2020. I have been averaging about 40 to 45 figures a year, just an average, some higher, some lower, but just an average. Uh, in terms of, and that is including all my pre-orders too. Like, I'm encompassing everything in terms of pre-orders. So that number is always going to be a little skewed because I'm including stuff I don't own yet. But I'm trying to future proof myself because Moducase is going to take anywhere between 12 to 18 months. So I'm trying to future proof figures and vehicles and stuff coming in. And so all of that stuff kind of went into the determination of the DF 120s, the amount, and also the space that they're going into. Now, my advice for those that are considering Moducase, and if you're on the fence, so what I'm going to be doing ultimately, I will be breaking this room down in the next 3 to 4 months. I am going to be moving all of this downstairs to avoid any disruption. So I will be continuing to make videos and streaming and things and making content. However, I'm going to utilize the existing muscle racks behind me. I may even end up buying a third one, just a cheap one, like a 36-inch or something like that. I'm not going to do it up with the bed sheets, and I'm just going to build it as is and just put it next to it as strictly as a storage piece. And I'm going to continue to use the muscle racks for the time being as placeholders until I get the Moducases in and then do the build up conversion. My advice is, if you're someone that has the muscle racks, it is important to utilize them because they are a good template to kind of help you understand your figure placement. If you're someone with DTOFs or China cabinets, it's going to be a little bit hard to figure out what Moducases might work for you. But muscle rack, I will say, is a good, it's a good skeleton because, like I said, it does kind of fit the same footprint in a way, but it's also gives you a gauge of like how many figures can go in a shelf and how many tiers. So it does help give you a better barometer, I think, versus someone that has like DTOFs. That is a really hard estimate to figure out. But if you do have muscle racks, I would say still utilize them because these aren't going away. I wish I was getting my Moducases tomorrow, but I have to wait about a year to a year and a half if I'm, on fingers crossed. That being said, I'm going to utilize, like I said, what I have here, move it downstairs, and then slowly make that conversion. Now, for those out there, to wrap up the video, I want to be very clear, and I hope he is watching this video. I did speak to Brian from Moducase. Him and I exchanged a little bit through Facebook Messenger. And I reached out because I had some questions about the product, about the payment plans. And, I just had some specific questions, let's put it that way. Not knowing, very candidly, I did not know if he knew who I was from the Ryan to the Mr. Mom collectibles. I had no idea. I'm very naive about that sometimes where people don't know, but it is what it is. I shouldn't be that naive at this point. But Brian was very open in saying, I know who you are. You're Mr. Mom. I've watched your content and stuff. And I was a little standoffish. I was like, oh no, oh shit. And to be fair to Brian, he was an absolute sport about it. And he said he watched my videos and he valued my opinions and he valued the criticism and he took it in stride. And Brian, I do have to give, if you're watching this video, which I hope you are, and I told him I was making another video about it. Kudos to being an up-class businessman and just kind of taking it in stride and not taking anything personal. And there's other business owners out there that I do feel the same way about, like Yost from Jazz Inc., for example, who you can criticize the product and he defends his product, but he's okay to open criticism. And I think that's important for a business owner to not take things personal and to value the harsh criticism. As much, the positive is usually always going to outweigh the negative, but you shouldn't shun away from the critical negative stuff either, because hopefully they can just help you improve. And Brian, like you said, he was very polite, and he even said he valued the criticisms that we had in my videos, and thought we had valid points at times. And so he was very kind to help me out, answer all my questions. He never shunned away from anything. And so I really do thank you for that. I never said anything about him negative as a person anyway. I never even corresponded with him until up to a couple days ago. So any critiques I had about was only strictly from the product side of his business. As a person, so far, we've had great conversations. And so I'm looking forward to the next step in my journey. I am fortunate that people don't get a second chance to hit the reset button sometimes. So that's what I'm also fortunate about, is that I'm able to move into a fresh space. And not everyone has that ability. So that is also a big reason why I really decided to look into Moducase. Like I said, a lot of things had to line up for this to happen. Otherwise, it would have been muscle racks. Um, it is going to be a little while to have to wait for them, obviously. So it's going to be, it is what it is. That's kind of the struggles with it. But nevertheless, this will be a multi-part series. I'll continue to film videos about the journey. But if you're someone out there considering Moducase, and you know how harshly critical I was of them, hopefully this video gives you some insight into how I planned for my purchase and the steps that I took in terms of laying out stuff, drawing stuff up, speaking to people that own the product, taking inventory in my own figures, and planning out future pre-orders, and kind of doing the calculations and things, and figuring out at the end of the day, you're just trying to throw a dart at a dartboard and hopefully you hit a bullseye and that it all makes sense. But the most important thing is that I can always expand. So it's not permanent. So even if I do everything where it's like, wow, I could use more, I've given myself the ability where I can do more, which is a very fortunate and blessed luxury to have, because not everyone, like I said, is able to hit the reset button. Sometimes they just have to work within the means that they can. And so, like I said, thank you so much for those who are watching. Brian, thank you so much for corresponding with me and answering all my questions and being a class act. Really do appreciate it. So far, like I said, what I've done is I put my deposit down on my Moducases. I did place my order a couple days ago officially, and I did put down my deposit. So now it's the waiting game. That's where we stand. And so I will be following up over time, but I will be probably filming the move, moving everything downstairs at one point when it comes in a few months. But let me know your thoughts below. I hope this video was a productive one. There was no hate. So for those out there, there's no hate this time. But like I said, I stand behind everything I said in the previous videos. And And like I said, it's just fortunate that life events took a little bit of a turn for me to allow me to be here at this time, which I'm very happy for. So let me know your thoughts below. Drop a like on the video and drop a comment below if you're on the fence about Moducase or Modus. Let me know if I can answer any questions. Definitely feel free, drop them below. But until then, this is Mr. Mom Collectibles saying take care, and I will see you guys in the next video.
Acknowledge me!